Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is going to be my September wrap-up. In the month of September 2023, I read 6 books and I also DNF'd 1 book. That was a total of 1,883 pages, not including the DNF in that count, and an average star rating of 3.5 even. So, a better month than August, where I really didn't read a lot and I really didn't like most of what I read, but still some room for improvement, so it's getting a little better, but I'm hoping that in October I'll be able to get over this little bit of a reading slump that I've been in. With all that being said, let's just dive in to book number 1. The first book that I read in the month of September was Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, which I gave 3 stars. I will admit, this is not a book that I personally was ever interested in reading, and the only reason I picked it up was because I was planning to join a local book club in September, thinking it would be a good way for me to get out of the house, meet some new people while discussing books, and you're probably sitting at home being like, Jackie, that sounds so nice, what happened? Well, the woman who said she was going to start the book club completely flaked, so now there is no book club. And I read this book for no reason. I could have DNF'd it. Guess I just wasted my time. Fun. I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't awful. I didn't hate it. I just think it wasn't, for me, it wasn't my personal taste. Like I said, this is not a book that I ever would have read on my own, so I recognize this is a beloved book. It's extremely popular. It has like 1 million Goodreads ratings and a very high average rating. It's just not the type of book that I'm interested in. This is a contemporary novel that I think leans a bit more like upmarket or literary, and it's about the title character Eleanor Oliphant, who is a woman, I think she lives in Glasgow. Like, she's very attached to her routine, and she sometimes has a hard time like reacting to social cues, which has caused her to be a bit of a outcast in her life, but her life ends up changing when she forms a friendship with Raymond, who is an IT guy at her work, and the two of them end up helping this old man after he falls, and basically it's just like meant to be a story of Eleanor coming into her own and breaking out of her shell a little bit. I personally don't like general contemporary fiction. I think this book was well written, but the style of writing is not really in accordance with my personal taste. And I personally just thought the book was a bit boring, but I do acknowledge that's because it's not the type of book that is particularly interesting to me. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying the author's not talented. It's just not the sort of thing that I like, and I now kind of wish that I hadn't read it because I was only reading it to join this book club, and the book club didn't even happen. So that was my sad start to the month of September. Next, I read Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. This is one of the Poirot mysteries. I gave this book 3 stars. It was good, but I think it's definitely one of my least favorite Agatha Christie's that I've read. If I was going to put it on my Agatha Christie rankings, I will link that video in the card, whichever side it is, I don't remember. I think it would probably be, towards the bottom. It would be ahead of the big 4 because I did not think it was actively bad like the big 4 was, but it would be around They Do It With Mirrors, so definitely bottom tier. But, I mean, I still gave it 3 stars, so I did not think it was bad. It's just, I love Agatha Christie. I've read a lot of Agatha Christie, so it's one of my least favorite by her, but not actively bad. This is a Poirot mystery. It is one of the later books in the series, published, I believe, in 1969. So Agatha Christie was pretty old when she wrote this and towards the end of her career. This book takes place in a village called Woodley Common, where a young girl is murdered at a Halloween party shortly after bragging to other guests at the party that she once witnessed someone commit a murder. So was she killed to silence her and prevent her from revealing larger secrets? I made a trying to solve Agatha Christie video for this book, which was really, really fun. I will link that in the card as well. I wanted to read this book because my mother and I wanted to go see A Haunting in Venice, which is based on this book. However, having now gone to see A Haunting in Venice, I think calling that movie an adaptation of Halloween Party is the loosest definition of adaptation I have ever heard, because really the only thing the movie has in common with this book is some of the characters have the same names. That's a tangent. I think this book was still enjoyable, but I don't think it had necessarily some of my favorite Christie characters. I really liked having Ariadne Oliver in this book, but the suspects were not super memorable to me. I don't think it had the trademark Christie wit that I personally really enjoy. And there were also several plot elements in this book that were never resolved, which was irritating to me, and also just a massive coincidence that was hard for me personally to believe. So not bad, but definitely one of my least favorite Christie books I've read. Still, it was a 3-star. Christie is one of my favorite authors, so a 3-star book from her is at the bottom of the list, but a 3-star is not a bad rating. Next, we are going to get into the books I read for my Library Picks My Books reading vlog. I will link that in the card as well if you want to go check that video out. It was really a lot of fun for me to make. Basically, I read 3 books that were recommended by librarians on the Libby app to see if they gave good recommendations. The first book that I read for that vlog was Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. This was from the Cozy Up with a Mystery book recommendations list. Unfortunately, this was my DNF for the month. I know this is a very popular historical mystery series, so I'm definitely an outlier opinion here. But personally, I just wasn't engaged enough to keep reading. This is the first book in a series. It follows the title character, Maisie Dobbs, when she starts her own private detective agency in post-World War I era London. The World Wars are not personally my favorite time periods to read about, and it seems like the mystery of this book was going to deal with a man who served in World War I and died overseas. And that's just not really something that is super appealing to me. It's one of my least favorite historical time periods. The book was also too slow for me. At the beginning of the book, Maisie is hired by this man who wants to investigate where his wife disappears to every Tuesday and Thursday. Maisie follows her and ends up discovering a story about, like I said, a man who died overseas during World War I. Then the book took a tangent and flashbacked so we could learn more about Maisie's past, and that is really just where it lost me, because I felt like for historical mystery, this book was very light on the mystery, and that's why I just didn't want to continue it. I know this is a popular series. I think it's just not for me, and I will not be continuing. Next in that vlog from the Long Weekend Short Reads playlist, I read Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This is a short Victorian-era novella following basically some sapphic vampires. It was published before Dracula, so this was actually a vampire story before Dracula, and I had heard a lot about this book from the classic literature girlies on Tumblr who were just all about this book and its gay vampire vibes. I quite liked this. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a really enjoyable, short, gothic Victorian novella. The book follows a young woman named Laura who is living in an Austrian castle with her father and some servants. One night, a mysterious and captivating young woman named Carmilla shows up, and she becomes a very good friend of Laura, a friend that potentially has some sapphic undertones. And of course, there's some suspicious things surrounding Carmilla, and based on this book being a famous vampire story, I think you know where this is going. I thought this novella was very interesting and well written. Even though it's a Victorian story, I did not think the writing style was hard to understand. Personally, I was always able to follow what was happening. And my only complaint would be I felt like the ending was a little rushed, but you know, I think that's to be expected when you're reading such a short novella. It was only a little over 100 pages, so obviously when you're reading something that short, there are pros and cons. The pro is that it's really easy to read, it's really short, it's really a fast read. The cons is when you're having a short story like that, sometimes you're not able to fully flesh out things like you could in a longer work. So pros and cons to that length. Overall though, I enjoyed this. It was my favorite thing I read in the vlog, and I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in a nice sapphic vampire story. I think it would make a great Halloween read, so maybe go check it out. Then I read The Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis, which I gave 2 stars. I did not think this book was badly written, but I hated one of the main female characters, and I don't think the author intended for me to hate her, so that was really my main issue with this book. I think I was supposed to sympathize with the character, but I actively disliked her. Not only disliked her, I hated her. I really felt genuine rage directed towards her and her life choices. This book has a really interesting concept. It is a dual timeline historical fiction book. The one timeline takes place in the early 1900s, I'm forgetting the exact year, and it's following Laura, my least favorite character I've read about, in 2023. Laura and her husband Jack move in with their children to the New York Public Library because Jack works at the library, and through his job, they are given an apartment inside the library. This was apparently a real thing that existed, which was super fascinating to me. But Laura decides that she's going to take a journalism class at Columbia Journalism School, which has recently admitted women, and she ends up meeting several feminist women from a radical group called the Heterodoxy Club, which causes Laura to question whether her life really is enough for her, or does she want something more out of her life than her marriage and her current situation. Then we also follow a timeline set in the 1990s where the main character is Sadie. Sadie is actually the granddaughter of Laura and Jack. She is currently working on an exhibition at the library, but items from the exhibition start disappearing. So who is it that is taking these items and why? The Sadie storyline was fine. I personally did not find Sadie that interesting, but I also didn't dislike her. I was just very neutral on her as a character. The Laura character I actively could not stand, and if you watch my library vlog, I do have a spoiler section where I explain why I hated Laura so much. And really that was my main problem with this book, is I felt like Fiona Davis wanted me to like Laura, but I could not support her or her decisions. I think she came across as an incredibly self-centered woman who does not think about the feelings of others. She does not think about the other women in the club. She does not think about her children, and she does not think about her husband. I felt she was such a selfish, unlikable individual. And that was what really ruined the book for me. I would consider reading another book by this author just to give her a second chance, because I don't think she's bad at writing. Hopefully, if I read another book by her, I will sympathize with the main character a little more, because this character I absolutely hated. I felt true, genuine rage because I hated her so much. Then I read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. I gave this 4 stars. This is one of my dad's favorite books, and so he has wanted me to read it for quite a while. This book is referred to as a nonfiction novel on Wikipedia, which sounds kind of like an oxymoron. And basically what they mean by that is the book recounts true events, but it does take creative liberties. It changes the names of some of the people involved and also embellishes their life stories a little bit, which I don't know how some of those people felt about that, but That's why it's referred to as a nonfiction novel, because it is based on true events, just with some characters and sequences of events changed a little bit for storytelling purposes. This book talks about many of the eccentric residents of Savannah, Georgia. Savannah is really a really cool city. When I went there, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think the author, he's very good at describing people and places in just a very nice, vivid detail. He is from a journalistic background, and so I do think he brings a bit of that journalistic writing style to this book. The book was a little slow for me at the beginning. Initially, I was thinking I was going to rate it 3 stars, but I think the book really picked up when we got to the murder trial. One of the people that the author met when he was living in Savannah was this man named Jim Williams, who was an antiques dealer in Savannah. Jim Williams was arrested for murder after a man who worked for him was killed. Jim Williams claimed that he killed this man in self-defense, but other people claimed that he did not. It was actually a cold-blooded murder, and the trial received a lot of media attention due to Jim Williams's fame, and also the fact that him and this man he killed were in a sexual relationship in a time where being gay or not straight was highly stigmatized. Like, it was something that a lot of people looked down on. I mean, a lot of people still have homophobic views today. So in this time, it was definitely the talk of the town when this crime happened. So the latter half of the book follows the trial a little more, and it was a wild trial. There were multiple trials. So that part of the book really picked up for me, and it was more exciting. That's why I ended up boosting my rating to 4 stars. The beginning I thought was too slow, but the latter half of the book was really, really good. Then the final book that I read in September was another nonfiction book. It was The Science of Murder, The Forensics of Agatha Christie by Carla Valentine. I actually ended up giving this book 5 stars. It was exactly what I hoped it would be when I picked it up. The author of this book, Carla Valentine, she actually is a mortician, a forensic pathologist. I don't know the exact term to use, but so in this book, she is talking about different forensic techniques, the history of forensics, through the lens of talking about how Agatha Christie depicted forensics in her writing. As someone who loves Agatha Christie and is also interested in forensics for research purposes, because I am interested in becoming a murder mystery novelist, this book was really fascinating to me, and I thought it was well written. I thought the author did a really good job at weaving in the Agatha Christie elements with the actual forensic science and the history of forensic science. I think she was able to weave all those things together seamlessly. It was not a dry read like nonfiction can be at times. I really quite enjoyed this book overall. She also does not give any outright spoilers for Agatha Christie books, so you can definitely still read this even if you have not made your way through the entire Christie catalog. Obviously, she gives away some minor spoilers because, for instance, if she's talking about ballistics, she's going to mention some books that do have a death by gunshot in them, but she does not outright spoil any books, like tell you who did it or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about spoilers. It was just really quite interesting, and honestly, the book gave me exactly what I was hoping for when I added it to my TBR, so I figured, hey, why not give it 5 stars? So everyone, those are all the books that I read in the month of September 2023. Let me know in the comment section down below, have you read any of the books that I read this month? If so, let me know what you thought of them. I would love to hear from you in the comment section. If you're still here and you don't know what to comment, why don't you drop what kind of emoji do I want you to drop? How about a skull? Drop a skull emoji in the comment section down below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. My social media links are in the description if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a tremendous rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.